Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Sure hope this is right. Believe it's all going good. But I can't be 100%. Deleting a few things here. There we go. And to share this video around a little bit as we get things started. Oh boy, let me go ahead and also put the phone on the old silent. Maybe it'll work. My silencer doesn't work. Sometimes the little switch on the iPhone slips out and it does not want to stay silent, and that can be annoying, especially if I go somewhere and I'm trying to be, respectful and keep it on silent, and it just goes bring bring. Excuse me. Put on a little something more in the background. There we go. Hmm. No, thank you, Twitter. I don't think I want to follow YouTube. Oh no. Oh, yep, that ain't gonna work. Alright. Sweet. Let's find a few things. I think things are going fine. I think it's nice and picked up. All right. First things first, let me hop up real fast and grab a drink and a charger for my phone, because it is dying. Yeet this bad boy on over here. Slide that on in. Okay. Slide you on in there, come on. Hell yeah, brother. It is all good. Brother, it is all good. There we go. So I can see the chat. Should things go. Trying to find a good one. Find me one that's Reno, to say the least. gotta work with me some here. Alright, we got a couple of places. Done up good. Done up real good. Find one. Old school stuff. What's some? Where's what I'm looking for? Doody doody doo. Doody doody. Oof. Plenty of ritual ones, which is good. Huh. One thing that I hate for sure is the fact that my I got a fly in here now up here, and I hate it. I can't. He keeps flying near me, but not near enough for me to grab, and I hate it. And oof. Oh, go back. I saw something. There we go. Neat. Neat. All right. Okay, so I think things are going good. It's music. Hopefully the music's picking up pretty decently. Yeah, can I pick up that? Oh, that kind of stinks. Can't hide everything. This is not going as planned, but oh well. Do a little reading. There we go. Pop that up real fast. Let's see. If you really want to hear about it, here's what happened. It was a long time ago, and I was working at a local pizza joint called Peter Pizza. I remember clock watching, waiting for midnight to strike so I could get the hell out of there. I didn't have any plans. I just wanted to go home and watch some movies and maybe smoke a joint before I left. Before I slept. Oof. That ain't right. Oh well. I hadn't been able to fall asleep last night, and I was tired and pissy. I remember hoping that the phone wouldn't ring because that was exactly how it went in the food service industry. I remember hoping that the phone wouldn't ring because that was exactly how it went in the food service industry. People called 5 minutes before closing time, expecting to get good service. Yeah, right. Peter Pizza. What the hell kind of a name was that? The better question was, why had I applied there for a job in the first place? I was a 25-year-old for starters. Oh, Jesus. I'm adding to it, and I know I shouldn't have. I was a 25-year-old for starters. Most people my age I'm paying my way through school. Okay, I'm looking through. I'm paying my way through school to fall back on as an excuse. Shit, all I could say was, it's all I'm qualified for because I didn't decide on a major when I was younger, and now that I'm older and wiser, I realize that everything else is a fucking waste of time. Whatever. Apathy and I, we pretty much go hand in hand. I didn't mean to burp. I got something a little different. There we go. Let's go and loop. Alright, sweet. Apathy and I, we pretty much go hand in hand. 14 minutes until I can get out. I hate the customers, or guests as the managers wanted me to call them. Guests, my ass. Being a guest required just a little bit of dignity to the... Being a guest required just a little bit of dignity. So the assholes that Hold on. Actually, I gotta make sure I'm reading that right. Being a guest required just a little bit of dignity, so the assholes that waddled in a Peter Pizza would be referred to as customers. I didn't work the front counter too much. I'm not entirely sure which end of the stick I was getting because I usually clocked in as a delivery driver. Paul, the owner of Peter Pizza, gave me $50 extra a week to pay for gas, which was more than enough. Paul was okay. Definitely not my favorite person. He had his moments of pleasantness, though. Tonight wasn't one of those nights. He had a stick up his ass for some reason or another, and it had been there since I had walked in the front door. I could see it on his face, in his eyes behind his glasses. I didn't know. I had arrived at work pleasantly stoned and had stayed that way until now. I didn't really care why old Paulie was mad, nor did I care if he was going to feel better. Not with 12 minutes left on the clock anyway. You can't just close the goddamn doors a few minutes early, can you? I thought, rolling my eyes as I watched the second hand tick, tick, tick its way around the clock. Paul was one of those bosses. The kind that would leave his front doors open for another 10 or 20 minutes past close. And he wondered why the turnover rate was so high. When you pander to the customers and not the employees, things are bound to go wrong. I sighed and reached in my back pocket to retrieve my cell phone. That was when the phone on the counter behind me rang for the first time in 2.5 hours. Ah, fuck, I groaned, rolling my head back. Subtly and I, we kinda clash. I was pissed. It was 10 minutes until close. Asshole, I muttered as I picked up the phone and put the receiver to my ear. Thanks for calling Peter Pizza. This is Ben speaking, I said, turning my head slightly to look towards the office where Paul was busy with his paperwork. How may I assist you this evening? Hey, I'm really sorry to be calling... What? Throw that out there. Alright. Hey, I'm really sorry to be calling so late, said the guy on the other end quickly. I immediately felt a little bad. He sounded polite, albeit a little bit anxious, and a little uptight. Are you still delivering? You bet, I said. Oh, good, the guy said. Thanks. Would it be possible to put in order for 6 large cheese pizzas with the extra cheese? You bet. What else can I get you? That's it, thanks. Your address, sir? 1388 Alpine Drive, the big place, the guy said. Name? There was a hesitation. The absolute smallest one that probably wouldn't have been noticeable, but I was in flaw-picking mood. It didn't bother me, but not then. Robert. My name is Robert. Be about 25 and 30 minutes, I told him. He thanked me again and hung up. As I punched the order into my terminal, I heard Paul exclaim in the back. "God damn it!" he cried. "6 goddamn pizzas? It's almost midnight." "You could have closed early," I muttered under my breath. Then, with a sigh to Paul, "Right there with you, boss." The pizzas took 15 minutes to make. Paul told me to head home after the delivery. He didn't feel like waiting around for me. I was just fine with that. I didn't even know where Alpine Drive was, so I punched into Google Maps at a quarter after 12. I sat down in my Mazda 3 and started the engine, waiting for the app to load. "You should reach your destination by 12:40, Google told me. I tilted my head back against the seat and let out a groan. Should reach my destination by 12:40. That was just great. "Thanks, Google," I said. I kind of wish it would say, "You're welcome, Ben," or something cool like that, but I don't know how comfortable I am being on a first-name basis with Samsung. The order total was over $70, though including the delivery charge, that meant an extra $10 or $20 in my wallet, which was fine by me. Hopefully, they weren't assholes who didn't tip. I shifted into gear and started heading for Alpine Drive. I wish we had a delivery zone that was smaller than 30 miles. Whatever. It could have been worse. I don't know how stoned I was by the time Google announced that I reached my destination in 3 minutes. I had taken Highway 54 all the way south, and the drive had been quick and uneventful. I played Alkaline Trio and Blink-182 on the way because some things never get old, no matter how old you are. I wasn't really familiar with the area, and I was glad as hell to have a GPS. After a while, the endless fields on either side of the highway had slowly turned into black, looming forest. The trees were black shapes against an eternally dark sky, lit only by a cast of my headlights. I'm pretty sure that was the first and last time I was that far south on 54. I am alone out here. That was true and false at the same time. I had passed 3 or 4 houses on the way. I saw them because of the lights glowing faintly in the dark. I remember thinking it was a 10 or 15 minute gap between seeing each house, making me wonder just how many miles the residents were from each other. It was an eerie thought, the nearest neighbor being 5 or 6 miles away. My ever wild imagination conjured up an image. I was dead in a bathtub, the shower head running over my naked, bloody corpse. I had fallen down, hit my head, and died because there was no one around to report me missing. I shook my head and continued driving until I was directed to take a right turn on Carpenter Hooper Road. I ended up turning onto a gravel road. I sighed, passing a bullet-riddled speed limit sign saying it was 55 through here. Were they serious? Who the hell went 55 miles per hour on an unpaved road? I coasted at a steady 40, keeping my eyes peeled for wildlife and random farm machinery. I wasn't worried about other cars because it had been 15 minutes since I had seen one, though it might have been longer. All alone, it was about where was I? I lost my place. It was only 5 or so minutes until I reached the end of what looked like a driveway. The nav told me that I would reach my destination after I turned right. I obliged and continued up the driveway. I was searching for the house and couldn't find it. The map said that the house was on the left side of the road, but it wasn't. You have arrived at your destination. No, I haven't, I said impatiently. There was nothing but trees on my left, so thickly knotted together that it looked impossible to walk through, let alone inhabit a home with modern conveniences here. I slowed down a little bit, and the bright beam of what could be a porch light flared up in my rearview mirror, on the right side of the road. Google, you asshole. It took me a minute to do a successful 180, and I eventually started up the driveway. The driveway was paved, and a few moments after, I pulled into it. I was aware that my tires were no longer crunching gravel. It had gotten very quiet, and this, for some reason, was really unnerving. I rounded a bend, and behind the pine trees surrounding me was the house. Whatever light I had seen was off now, and the place was totally dark. The driveway looped around the front of the house, and I slowed to a stop and parked. Leaving the engine running out of habit, people kept telling me that my car is going to get stolen. Please, steal my Mazda. Did everyone leave? Maybe I had gotten the wrong address, or I typed the wrong one, or something. I don't know. The GPS had already been wrong once. No, the address next to the door was the same as what I typed in. I shrugged. I shrugged it off because it wasn't that big of a deal. It was a big deal then, anyway, because that's just how things go. The characters in horror movies make those stupid decisions because going upstairs to investigate that strange noise is what most people would likely do. It's part of logic because floorboards like to creak randomly, and things fall over all the time. It's a security thing, though. We as human beings have to be certain that we're safe. The idea of an intruder was a slimy thought. The word intruder even had a sinister feel to it. Oh, delicious. Hey, Plato, your philosophies and anecdotes are adorable, but your pizzas are going to get cold, and you're going to be monsooned here in bumfuck. I was tired. My mind tends to wander when I'm tired. Slap happy, I think it's called. I got out of the car and stood up straight, stretching and listening for a moment to hear my joints crackle. I let out a long breath and walked to the trunk to retrieve the pizzas, because that's just how much I care about my job and its valued customers that call just before close. I took another glance at the dark house and rolled my eyes. This was probably a prank call. I was willing to bet a testicle that a bunch of assholes had picked a random address and sent me to it. They were all probably having a laugh. I'm not trying to be overly emotional, but that honestly hurts my feelings. Oh, what a fucking waste of time. I need a new job. The pizzas were all in an insulated bag, and I carried it lightly on my fingertips. I waited tables for God knows how long before this, and I developed a great set of forearms and really strong fingers because of how often I hold heavy trays and plates. I balanced the bag without a thought as I made my way around the car up to the driveway towards the front porch. The sounds of my shoes crunching over loose gravel and dead leaves was loud, and I felt isolated, 1,000 miles from nowhere. There was no wind, the woods around me were quiet, and the only light other than the moonlight was the glow of my headlights. I don't know why I looked up at the second floor as I walked across the yard. I was lost in thought, noting that the grass was long and in need of a trim. It was a quick glance up at that led to an attempt at looking forward again. I looked up again, and in a flash, I thought I had seen a silhouette of a man in one of the upstairs windows. But I marked it off as being a trick of the light. I don't know if I want to meet the owners of the place this far out in the boonies. The thought gave me goosebumps, but that I'd try to ignore. I mounted the porch steps as I walked across it, thudding and creaking across the floorboards. I noticed there was no doorbell, and that the curtains were drawn. I didn't give either a second thought, and I knocked on the door in tune of the theme of Star Wars. My routes at work had taken me some really shitty places. This house looked fine, a little unkempt, but far from gentrified? I'm not sure how that word is. Far from gentrified. I stepped back from the door a little bit and waited for someone to answer for about 30 seconds. But by then, a minute had passed, and I knocked again, this time with 3 booming knuckle raps that were loud and clear. Fuck. I muttered as I realized that no one was really home after all. What a fucking waste of time. I turned around to get back in the car and gave the house a fleeting glance as I bounced down the steps. I stopped when I saw one of the curtains on the first floor fall back into place as if someone had been standing there. "Hey," I called up. Hey dude, I've got a bunch of pizzas for you." I walked up the stairs again. I was miffed, surprised, and confused all at once because I was sure the house had been empty. Why the hell were all the lights off? That was the big one, the question I really wanted to know. I wondered if it was a surprise party, but shook it off. If Robert or Stan or whatever his name was didn't answer the door this time, I was going to drive my ass home and throw each of those damn pizzas out the window along the way. I knocked on the front door again. Here we go. "Come on, man," I said under my breath. Then I said loudly, "Pizza guy!" Then quietly, "Fucking waiting for you." That fly's right here, hold up. Boom. Fuck, you got away. I gave it a full minute and turned around to leave, but as I did, the sound of footsteps inside the house made me stop. I turned around again. God, that fly he's teasing me. He's testing me. He's taunting me. He's trying to skedaddle skadoodle, but I'm gonna turn him into a motherfucking noodle. I'm pissed. I'm pissed at you, fly. You need to get away from me. I don't enjoy your company. I gave it a full minute and turned around to leave. But as I did, the sound of footsteps inside the house made me stop. I turned around again and was about to knock when I heard someone say, "Hey, sorry." It was a man's voice, low and pleasant like a radio talk show host. But it scared the hell out of me anyway. I wondered why was he talking to me through the door instead of just opening. That's totally fine," I replied uncertainly. You Richie?" There was the slightest pause where he said, "It's, Robert." It's Robert. The tone of his voice as he emphasized his name was a little weird. Like he forgot it. I didn't think too much of it, honestly, because he had scared the hell out of me, but because the customers I served were strange and sometimes liked to use fake names when ordering pizzas like Dale Gribble or King of the Hill or... Anyway, I don't know why, and I don't question why people are the way they are. You ordered the 6 large cheeses, right? I felt ridiculous, talking to this guy through the door, and a little uncertain. I was ready to run at any moment, in case things went south with the guy behind the door. Sirens weren't going off inside. The guy instantly struck a weird chord with me, but not a threatening one. "Yes, I did. Look, I know this is a weird question, but could you come around to the back door and meet me on the patio?" I didn't answer right away, and maybe that's why he added, "This door is all fucked up. I was waiting for you in the kitchen. I thought I'd mention that on the phone." All I could say was, "Oh yeah, okay." Had he told me that? I didn't think so, but I couldn't remember. I had been pissed about how late it was and everything, but the order itself had vacated my mind. I was a little unsettled by how quickly he added that the door was busted. This is usually where most people say, "I'd like to get the fuck out of here." And I probably would have until I realized that Paul would probably charge me the full fare for the lost pizzas. I didn't feel like paying for them. So I walked down the steps again and started heading for the backyard. Once again, I heard the loud crunching of gravel beneath my feet as I balanced the pizzas on my fingers. The crescent moon above was the only source of light, and it was no surprise that I nearly tripped over a rock the size of a softball that was hidden in the dark. I stumbled and almost fell, carefully riding the pizzas in my left hand. I heard something crunch behind me. I heard something crunch behind me. I whirled around, and as I did, I caught a glimpse of somebody peering at me from around the corner of the house. He must have seen me and noticed him. He must have seen me notice him because he quickly withdrew and disappeared from sight. I started backing up, keeping my eyes on that spot. I had an unsettling thought. There had been someone behind me, walking in step with me to avoid detection until I tripped and threw him off. I was still walking backwards, but I was on the verge of walking forward and getting the hell out of Dodge when I realized just how scared I was. I didn't want to go back the way I came, back towards where I had seen the figure. I couldn't help that, but to think that he was waiting right around the corner and ready to grab me as I passed by. But heading to the back door seemed like an equally bad idea. Excuse me. I wish I'd never gotten out of the car. I hadn't stopped moving and waltzed right into the backyard. As I passed through the gate, a set of motion-activated lights mounted above the back door turned on. I dropped the pizzas in shock. I dropped the pizzas in shock when the bright halogen lights washed over me and illuminated most of the backyard. I turned around wildly, expecting to see somebody standing right behind me, but to my surprise, though, I didn't see anything but a fenced-in backyard that was flushed against the woods. The grass was ankle-high and laced with various weeds, but I didn't pay much attention to it. The yard was huge, and the guy probably hadn't had time to mow it. I was collecting the pizzas from the ground when I heard someone say, "Hey, buddy." I turned around quickly to see the face of a middle-aged man. He was standing on the back porch with both his hands held open at waist level in an unintimidating gesture. He looked a little wildly and gave me a nervous smile as I jumped to my feet. "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you," he said, smiling sheepishly. "It's just a heart attack," I told him, shifting the pizzas around so they were evenly stacked. "I'm really sorry if it's super creepy over here right now," he said in a tone that made me feel totally embarrassed. "I literally just lost power a few minutes ago. I don't know if we blew a fuse or if the generator blew or... I don't even know." He ran his hands through his hair, shaking his head, and to top it off, some asshole tried to rob my place the other night and fucking busted the front door. He shook his head again and lowered his hands back to his sides. I'm sorry," he said. "It's been a really shitty night, you know?" Yeah," I said, nodding. I felt really stupid. The man in front of me looked normal. He talked clearly and, again, pleasantly. He was even wearing a light blue shirt, khakis, and some kind of sweater tied around his neck. He looked like a rich snob, the way he dressed, but to be honest, hell, his hair was even combed over in a douchebag style, and he struck me as the kind of guy who had never worked anywhere near fast food. Usually this meant a lack of courtesy towards people like me, calling such a late hour and such. Oh boy, what is up with this font? What? Why did this change? Jesus. Why did it get so small? What? Why did you do that? I wasn't quite at ease, but I never am on deliveries. People are capable of dark things. A lot of the time we do those things for money. Hold up, wait a minute. Okay, weird. I'm not gonna push that. I had maybe $60 on me. I had maybe 60. I wasn't quite at ease when I ran on deliveries. People are capable of darker things. I had maybe $60 on me, but people have been slashed to ribbons for much less. They've been killed for no reason at all. I know the feeling. Can I zoom in on this? Is there another way to zoom in? Where's the zoom? I want to zoom. I don't know how to zoom this bitch. There we go. Hell yeah, brother. I know the feeling, I said as I squatted down to pick up the pizzas. I'm sorry, but he cut me off with a wave of his hand and gestured his thumb at the motion light. This light would get me on an episode of Fear of a Neighbor, if I had neighbors. Scares the shit out of me every time a deer walks through the yard. I got the fence, but they don't care. I slowly approached the man, who slowly approached me. It was like we were afraid of each other, or maybe just embarrassed of ourselves. He was actually holding the cash in his hand when I unzipped the bag and handed him the pizzas. He handed me two bills, both hundreds. Oh man, I don't have that much change on me. No, Robert said, shaking his head and taking the pizzas. That's your tip for coming all the way out here so late. I know you guys are about to close. For $100 and something tip, I said, hey man, it's fine, really. All I was going to do was go home and watch TV until I fell asleep. It was the truth, but I tried my best to make it sound like it was something I didn't want to do. Oh. Damn. I broke a nail. Oh no. For $100, fell asleep, blah blah. The tip threw me way the hell off. I had been expecting anywhere between $1 and $20. This guy was loaded. Well, I appreciate it anyway. No, that's not the right voice. Well, I appreciate it anyway, the guy said. Thanks. He had been maintaining eye contact with me the whole time, and in a non-threatening way. More like a salesman than anything. He suddenly broke it and stared past me into the woods behind the barkyard. In the woods behind the backyard, there was a man standing on our side of the fence, barely visible in the darkness. Oh boy. Did he talk to you? Oh, I know. Man standing on our side of the fence, barely visible in the darkness. I don't know why I whispered, but... Oh shit. But Robert looked at me, concerned, and then back at the woods. Did he talk to you? Did he talk to you? He demanded angrily. Son of a bitch has been scaring the shit out of us. The man in the woods nimbly hopped over the fence and proceeded our way in a slow and steady gait. Robert shouted, "Hey!" in an angry tone and leapt off the porch. He shoulder checked me as he ran past towards the fence. "I told you to get the hell off my property!" I stuffed the money in my pocket and started to follow him for whatever reason. He was walking fast and intent on getting the man, judging by the pace. He was halfway across the yard when a gunshot rang out. He stopped in his tracks and did a 180, sprinting back towards the house with his hands over his head. Get inside, he shouted, waving wildly at me. Everything happened so fast, I was still wondering who the hell the guy in the backyard was when the gunfire rang out. Robert grabbed me by the collar as he ran up the stairs, dragging me up and into the house with him. He slammed the door behind us fiercely and whispered, "Get down." Before locking it, he forced me into a squatting position, and we crab-crawled our way across the dark kitchen. He led to a small door It was a black rectangle, absolutely dark. I was thinking it led to a basement or somewhere, but Robert ushered me over the threshold and onto a top step. I stumbled over my own feet and nearly lost my balance, seizing hold of the banister and stopping from falling down the stairs. I looked back and saw Robert was now standing up straight. We locked eyes for a brief moment. His face was expressionless as he brought his leg back and kicked me in the abdomen, hard enough to send me flying back into the blackness behind me. I didn't have time to react, let alone scream. There was a moment where I sailed weightlessly in midair before I crashed against the angles of the wooden steps. On my back, I heard wood splinter in an awful flare of pain. I felt something in my upper back crunch wetly beneath my skin. I bumped down the last 8 or 9 steps in a violent series of somersaults, coming to an abrupt stop as I crashed shoulder first against the stone wall at the bottom of the stairs, landing on my chest. I opened my eyes and took a shuddering breath in. I had landed on a dirt floor in a plume of dust and shot up when I had crash landed. It flooded my nostrils and my throat, and I immediately started coughing, which hurt my entire body. When I stopped coughing, I cautiously wiggled my toes to make sure I wasn't paralyzed from the violent fall. The first thing I saw was a stone-carved table that could have been an altar. There were dozens of unlit red candles on it and around it. The table was spotted with blood. I was still trying to process everything that had just happened. It had been less than a minute since I had walked into the backyard. I understood that I had been tricked and ambushed. I was trying to piece together what the table was for and why there was blood on it. I thought I knew, but wouldn't let me fully form the thought in my head. I heard footsteps shuffling around upstairs as I slowly got to my feet. I was numb as I stood up straight, wondering why the coughing had hurt so badly. I heard joints crack and pop, but barely felt them as I began to look around the dirt room. Drawn in and held wrapped by the altar in the middle, I couldn't allow myself to think about what the altar was for. I tore my gaze away and looked at the floor. For a few moments, I felt the muscles in my jaw give away before it dropped open at the sight of hundreds and hundreds of footprints on the floor. Almost all of them were very small children's footprints. Ooh, it's getting spooky. Damn, I wish I had some light. No, I don't have it. Alright. I let out a shuddering gasp, and at that, when I saw Robert had made his way down the stairs and was standing in the spot where I landed. "It doesn't hurt," he said, grimacing apologetically as he revealed the carving knife in his hand. I really wish there was another way, one that wasn't so messy, but what can you do, right? I couldn't say anything. I wish I could say I was forming some genius plan, but I was drawing a blank. I had broken something when I fell because breathing hurt pretty bad and standing up straight was worse. Seeing the knife scared me to a point that I not only began a series of high-pitched moans, I also pissed myself. A stream of hot piss ran down my thighs and puddled around my chunks. My chucks, not chunks. Oh, okay, good. Around my chucks. I held out both hands, my eyes darting right and left as I desperately searched for an escape route. I was fucked. Robert was maybe 6 feet away and slowly closing in. There was the chance of me running to the right or left and trying to get around him, but I don't think I'd be fast enough. I smoked too much for starters, and the fall down the stairs took the rest of me. I didn't want to die. I didn't have much to live for, not really, but that didn't really mean my life was worthless. I thought I was a pretty nice guy. I got pissed every so often, but who didn't? I wasn't really hero material, but I wasn't the villain at the end of the spectrum either. I helped people when I could. I didn't bother returning clothes I just bought and decided they weren't for me. I donated them to Goodwill because someone... Oh, I'm sorry, I just had dinner right before this. There it is. because someone less fortunate could enjoy them. I held the door open for people and said, "May I please have?" and "Thank you." Robert stopped 3 or 4 feet away. He smiled at me, and it was a genuine smile because I saw it touch his eyes. A smile had never made my blood run that cold. "It doesn't hurt, Ben," he said in a reassuring tone, even going so far as to raise his free hand in another non-threatening gesture. "Trust me, this whole thing is beyond your understanding and mine. The magnitude, you'll never understand, and neither will I. All I can say is that you're donating your life to a beautiful thing, Ben. So just lay still and close those baby blue eyes of yours." I don't know why I started to get pissed then. The fear was still there, but it was different somehow. In a way I can't really describe. I hadn't done a fucking thing. I had gone to work. "Go to hell," I hissed and spat at him as hard as my lungs would allow. Bloody saliva hit his face and ran down his cheeks, ran over his lips as he slowly licked it away. For no reason, the altar caught my eye again, mostly the sharp corners. He started walking again, and I shifted left along the wall until I was near the corner. Robert's body tensed as he lashed out with his free hand to grab me. He seized the collar of my shirt and pulled me closer as he brought the knife down, aiming for my chest. I grabbed his arm by the forearm and shoulder charged him at the same time. We stumbled backwards together until Robert, slower back, roughly bumped into the corner of the stone altar. "Fuck!" he screamed, craning his head back. I heard the knife clatter on the altar, and Robert grabbed the sides of my head with his thumbs, searching for my eyes and tearing the skin just above my eyebrows. I went back with his momentum and then decided to go forward again, shoving him onto the altar again and again. He let out a pained scream as the stone corner dug into his tailbone. This time, he lurched forward, reaching behind him to feel his back. I charged him then. I didn't know where his strength came from, but I didn't know where the strength came from, but I didn't really want to know. I never questioned a good thing. I sure as hell don't anymore. Wait, hold up. Ooh, that delay. That delay is bad. It's a bad delay, I didn't know. His back collided with the altar again, and he let out another pained shout before he unexpectedly stepped forward and brought his knee into my chest. I don't think I'll ever feel pain like that again. I saw stars and screamed so loudly I saw red and black spots glittering in front of the stars. I was holding my chest and abdomen in both hands, barely able to breathe. When I saw Robert closing in on me, taking long and purposeful strides, I didn't think as I lowered my head and charged him with a headbutt. With the last bit of strength I had, the top of my head slammed into his abdomen. I heard the wind rush out of his lungs. Rush out of his lungs. And lost his balance. Both fell back, shooting both arms out to steady himself from falling. But his head met the corner of the stone altar, with a wet crack and a large spray of blood that hit me in the face from a few feet away. I cried out and frantically started wiping my eyes with my forearm. My vision cleared, and I saw Robert leaning against the side of the altar. A hairy smear of blood led from the sharp corner where his head was now. His eyes were bugging out, and his mouth was hanging open. There was a growing pool of blood around him. Was he dead? He had to be. His head had just gotten split open like an egg. I quickly stepped past him, making my way for the stairs. God, get out of here, you. You're so annoying. You're gonna fucking die down here. Oh, wait, maybe that's not right. Sing song voice. You're gonna fucking die down here. That's about right. Unseen from the other side of the altar, I heard some more scraping and knew that he was starting to get to his feet. I saw one of his bloody hands reach up and grip the edge of the altar. I didn't stick around to see anything else. I gripped the railing with both hands and hauled myself up the stairs as best as I could, trying to look in every direction at once. I could hear Robert shuffling behind me, chuckling and panting wetly. I reached the top of the stairs and looked around at the moonlit kitchen before hauling ass for the back door. The kitchen was empty, save for a full bottle of 337 Cabernet on the counter with 5 empty wine glasses around it. A brief glimpse of his living room told me that nobody lived there, but it was countless amounts of spiderwebs in the corners and of the ceilings that told me that nobody had been there for a long, long time. I heard Robert clunk on one of the stairs, calling my name. I reached for the doorknob, and boom! I reached for the knob on the back door, and boom. The window on the door shattered into 100 pieces as a bullet tore through them. I whirled around and saw a man standing in the hallway between the kitchen and living room, holding a hunting rifle in his hands. I was almost sure it was the same man from the backyard. He jacked another round and leveled it at my chest. I held both hands out, screaming, Wait, no, please, God, no! The man's eyes locked with mine before he abruptly dropped his rifle and gasped inward one time before he exploded. I stared at the wet spot where he had been standing 2 seconds ago and the rifle on the ground. I was half thinking he had been wearing some type of bomb, but there had been no sound except for the briefest of pulverizing bone and ripping flesh. There was blood everywhere now, covering walls and my body. I was standing frozen in place with one hand on the doorknob when Robert appeared in the basement doorway. One of his eyes was crooked, looking in every direction, while one was locked on me, full of anger. He stayed silent as he started towards me, and I don't think he would have known anything was wrong if he hadn't tripped over the dropped rifle. He stumbled around, looking down, revealing the gaping hole in the back of his head. I could see his brain in the glimmer of the moonlight, silver gray and pulsing. Almost the same he had looked for him a few minutes. I jerkily turned, and he saw what he was looking at. There were 3 yellow jackets on the door behind me, lazily crawling in the wood. I was prepared to move away. They flickered their wings and took off into the air. They flew into the darkness and were gone. Oh no, Robert whispered, covering his face with both hands. Oh no. What is that? I asked quietly as the door began to vibrate slightly. I was no longer afraid of Robert or whoever else was with him. The look of terror on his face told me that I should probably be afraid of whatever he was afraid of too. Why couldn't you just go to sleep? Robert whimpered, and then both his eyes exploded. Blood spattered on my chest, and I turned the knob, pulling the door as hell broke loose in the house on 1388 Alpine Drive. Hornets flew out of Robert's bloody eye sockets, and he screamed shrilly, reaching up to cap them. The drain in the kitchen sink made a loud growl before sending an endless surge of shit. I'm sure it was shit. It splattered against the ceiling hard enough to make a hole. The oven exploded in a fireball, and I saw 4 figures, all the size of children, burning like wildfire, emerge. I heard the sounds of children crying, but also heard them laughing too. Robert turned in their direction, still screaming and trying to cover his eyes. Oh God, I'm sorry. The lunch or dinner or whatever I had. I was. Oof, one of them reached out and took it. His fingers, burning his fingers off. He held out one hand in the direction of the children. One of them reached out and took it, burning his fingers off with his hand with an audible sizzle. I was gripping the doorknob tightly, but I looked down when I crushed it in my hand. I was now holding an eye the size of a tennis ball in my right hand. It oozed blood and yellow fluid between my fingers. I cried out and threw it onto the ground. The kitchen walls began to split. People shapes wrapped in newspaper and bed sheets emerged from the walls, most of them missing their heads. They briefly paused to look at me, or at least turned in my direction. I stared right back. They all moaned in unison before turning around and advancing on Robert as well. I heard a series of cracks and looked in the hallway towards the living room and saw something bulging beneath the floor, tearing it up as it made its way into the kitchen, sending shards of wood into the air. It was growling. He was screaming my name as it approached me. The floorboards swelled and splintered as an unearthly black mass began to emerge. I couldn't take anymore. The fear broke. I threw myself onto the back porch, pulling the door closed behind me with a loud slam. I stumbled into the railing, and Robert's screams stopped, but the growling continued. "Lights out, Bobby," I whispered as I felt my way along the railing and vaulted down the stairs. I could hear whines and moans amidst the growls and snarls. I ran alongside of the house as fast as I could. There was no pain. My only thought was my fucking survival. The car was 10 yards away when the windows I ran past began to shatter outward like small bombs were going off inside. I cried out with each one and covered my head, never taking my eyes off the car. The growling grew louder and louder, overlapped with weeps, moans, and shrieks of damnation. Ben, stay with me. Ben, it's okay. Don't be afraid, Ben. Your father is with us, Ben. It doesn't hurt, Ben. I slammed into the side of my Honda with a cry of pain and patted my pockets for my keys. They weren't there. I madly felt up and down myself to find them. My eyes keep going on the house. The window panes began to light up with a deep red and low frequency humming seemed ever present in my ear. That was when I realized I'd never killed the fucking engine. I left the damn car running the whole time because I thought it'd only be a minute or two. Fucking shit, I cried incoherently, albeit joyously, as I pulled the door open and dove inside, smacking the lock button down hard enough to crack the plastic. I didn't bother with the seatbelt. I smashed the brake and reached for the gear shift. A man's body landed on the hood of my car, his face cracking the windshield with a spray of blood. He gripped the hood, trying to pull himself forward. The top of his head was gone. There was no brain inside, just blackness. He looked up at me, and I saw his teeth were missing, ripped out of the bleeding gums. "Help me, please," he groaned as something pulled him off the hood with such force that he lost 4 fingers. I know because I found them later on just beneath my windshield wipers. My passenger side window shattered. I covered my face in my arms, peering through the crack between them to see that the house was burning yellow and white. I could hear screaming and laughing, the sounds of children crying. A growing roar was coming from somewhere. I didn't care. I punched the accelerator and the tire spun wildly against the gravel for a moment before I was getting traction. The car launched forward, and I fought like hell to keep driving in a straight line. I only glanced back once to make sure that I wasn't being followed, and I saw that the house was gone. There were a few floating embers like fireflies over the spot where the house had been at the disappearance. So I soon noticed them. I didn't slow down. I don't think I even checked the review after that because I didn't want to see anymore. I couldn't take it. I drove myself to the hospital and parked in a no parking zone just outside the entrance. Through the plate glass doors, I could see people, doctors, nurses, and patients and janitors. I was never so happy to see them in my life. I killed the engine and stepped out of my car, only to have my legs give out underneath me. I collapsed to the ground painfully, but I couldn't make a sound. I didn't have strength anymore. I opened my mouth to call for help, but nothing was happening. I was at a hospital, mind you, and I knew that somebody would eventually come out to help me. Key word there was eventually. It could have been minutes or hours. I didn't know how much more my body was going to take, how much more blood I could lose. All these thoughts raced through my mind as I lay on the ground trying to scream and trying to get back up. I stopped moving entirely when I heard the click of my car's door, my car's lock disengaging. The back door on the driver's side slowly opened, and a leg, clad in black dress pants and shiny black dress shoe, carefully stepped onto the pavement. Another followed. A man stepped out of the Honda. He was dressed in black, but there was something about him that was almost comforting. His presence was welcomed. I never saw his face. He closed my back door and stood over me for a few seconds. "Thanks for the lift, kid," he said pleasantly, and stepped around me, out of sight. I dimly heard him say, "I think this gentleman needs some help." He walked back towards me and then passed me in the opposite direction. From this angle I could see him. I watched him walk away into the shadows and the street lights up the street. I could hear him humming faintly, melodically. I'd never heard that melody before, and I haven't heard it since. I heard the sounds of footsteps approaching, and the way the accompanying voices sounded, they belonged to medical staff. I heard the sounds of medical staff. Oh, Mom, where was I? Blah, blah. The man stopped halfway down the block, pausing beneath a broken streetlight and looking up at the sky. A white-clad leg stepped in front of me for a split second, and the man was gone. When I next looked, his empty clothes hovered in the air for a moment, as if somebody was still inside them, before collapsing silently onto the sidewalk. A black mist floated up towards the sky, engulfing the dead streetlight for a moment before dissipating entirely. The light flickered for a few times and then began to burn brightly. That was the last thing I saw before I passed out. Excuse me. 5 broken ribs, a punctured lung, cerebral and cardiac contusion, and fractured skull. Somehow I survived. People have made it out of situations much worse, though. I've since quit. I've quit Peter Pizza. Yes, I have. I've since quit I've since quit PP Pizza. PP Pizza. I'm done with PP Pizza. Oh man. I haven't exactly gotten my life together as of yet, but I can say that I have been a whole lot happier since that night. I was almost killed. The police checked out the house on Alpine Drive, which was nothing more than a foundation that had been abandoned for 3 decades. One of the canine dogs started pawing at the dirt and uncovered part of a child's skull. An excavation of the site uncovered 4 children that had been missing for years, in addition to 9 other missing people. They had all disappeared under extremely bizarre circumstances. Some had been beaten to death, others stabbed, others unknown. The children had been burned alive, and the rest had been crudely mummified. With newspapers and Elmer's glue. I've had a lot of phone calls from family members of the deceased thanking me for finally giving them closure. I don't know where they got the idea that I was the one they should be thanking, but I was glad they could find the answers they were looking for, even though they only really got half the answer. I doubt I'll ever find the answers I'm looking for, and really one question weighs on my mind day in and day out. What the hell were those guys messing around with, and why did it hitch a ride in my backseat? It wasn't so bad. Ooh. Thanks for the vote. You're welcome. Alright. Nope. You just push that on over there. There we go. It was fun. That was a fun little story there. A little didgeridoo. I think that'll probably do it though. That's been a whole hour, so thank you for watching, and hopefully you can go back and watch this again, a little live reading. Maybe I'll do some more live readings before, or again, whatever. Either way, good night, everybody.